Hey everyone, welcome back to Devlog number 2 for strain 0. I'm going to be jumping into a bit of code this time. I have a very specific issue that you've probably noticed as well if you've tried it out um, on the website, and that is that performance is pretty bad, even though there's not a lot going on at the moment. Um, so I have a list here of things that I want to do. We've already got the trees, grass, rocks in there. The problem now is we need to get some physics meshes on there. We need the server to see them. It's basically just the client that's rendering them at the moment, meaning you will have noticed that the zombies will just, or your player will just walk straight through either trees or the rocks. So we need the server to be able to see them so that it can collide with them, and then also we need to instance the trees and the rocks. The grass is already instanced, but there's probably still a bit more we can do on that side as well. But we need instances for the rocks and the trees. And I have a bit of an example here as well. If we take a look at this, I think I'm blocking it. No, I'm not. So I've just spawned in here, and straight away with even a very basic scene, I think you can see it here, we're getting about 240, 250 draw calls, um, even though there's not that much going on here. So that's what we're going to be looking at, and we'll see if we can fix that. Okay, so the first issue um, that we're having, in particular with the trees and the rocks, is basically I have this is a chunk here. I think it's 40 by 40 at the moment. So each chunk gets an XY coordinate, and then there's a function here that gets called in the constructor. So everything gets set up in the onload. I'm loading a few textures for the terrain and everything, and then at the very end I add vegetation. And then inside the vegetation, I basically go through each XY in the chunk, and then in my terrain generator, we can click into that. I basically have a function that samples the noise and then gives me back the likelihood of there being whatever I want in there. In this case, it's do I have a rock there? And then very specifically, I think this is exactly where the issue already is that for each rock that gets sampled, I basically create a new instance and then add that to the scene. What we need to be doing instead, and it's the same for the trees, is instead of creating a new instance, we should be collecting all the positions, storing them in an array, and then having that array passed into each class. Whether this is, for example, this is a rock class. Um, Here I'm loading the instance. I'm adding that into the scene manually. What I should be doing here is just giving it multiple positions, having the instance mesh, and then getting that to render in the scene. So that should hopefully at least reduce the draw calls. All right, so this is the current state of it. Um, so I've moved the vegetation generation off to the server. The reason I want to do that is because in future I want the players to be able to mine rocks or to chop down trees, and I need to be able to sync the state of that across all the clients. So the server has to be in charge of where vegetation is, and just so that we already have that state on the server. So basically, what I'm doing again, we've got the chunk XY. We're looping through it. We're sampling. Do I have a tree at this coordinate? If we do, we're pushing it into the associated array. Same thing goes for the rocks. And then after that, when the chunk, when the client requests a certain chunk, this gets serialized. So the client, like the chunk that gets serialized, will have the positions, the scales, and the rotations of either rocks or trees. And then on the client side, I have a tree object now. All the positions come in, the scales, the rotations, and here I'm creating an instance mesh, and then I loop through it. I push into the instance mesh, and then I add one single instance mesh per chunk for trees. Um, Now there's another issue that I've come across here, which I'll go through. I'll get the sketch pad out and I'll go through it. But I think for now, this is it's okay. We're adding one instance mesh for trees per chunk, um, and that looks pretty good. The same thing goes for the rock. Same thing. We're pushing one instance mesh. Now, obviously, this is sort of the same code again. I haven't gotten to a sort of an abstract vegetation class yet, but hopefully we will get there. And then I'll just switch over to what this looks like now on the client. I think you can already spot it there. So if you have a look at the draw calls, where am I? Over this side. We've got 113 draw calls, 112, 118. So already this is a lot better. It's over 50% reduction in draw calls, and it's noticeably smoother as well. And as you can see here, I've also added you're now hitting the trees. So there's just a basic cylinder here, on also on the rocks. Do we have one here? We do. So the rocks, you can now collide with the rocks as well. So I've just wanted to expand a bit again, because if I zoom out with the camera, it actually makes the before and after a lot more dramatic. So if you have a look here, I'm zoomed out. I've got about 375 draw calls. Another interesting thing to note was, I mean, the amount of triangles in here. It was because of the grass. What I did implement as well was basically LODs on the grass. And I also had in Blender on the vertices, I had vertices. I thought I had like each grass blade was 15 vertices, but I had another 6 vertices, which could be merged by distance to remove them. So essentially, if I've got hundreds of thousands of grass blades, I've got 6 vertices. I've got a crazy amount of triangles being rendered that aren't necessary. So just as an example, this is the before zoomed out. And then let me just go to the current state now. All right, so this is the after. So as you can see, 193 draw calls. The triangles has massively reduced. We're talking, what is that? I think we're at 30% of what it originally was. So it's a massive improvement, and it's a lot smoother than it was before. All right, so final note. One of the things that I came across when doing the instancing, as an example. So currently the way it works is I have a chunk. So that's one chunk, and then on the chunk, let's say these are trees. So there's a bunch of trees here, and then these trees, they're one instance. So that's one instance there. So that's one draw call. Now the problem, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just interesting is that I have chunks around here. So for example, I have a chunk here because we've obviously got draw distance. There's trees here. I've got a chunk here. There's trees on there. I've also got another chunk here. So I basically have 9 chunks in total. And then the interesting thing here is that all of these ones, they're all individual. Like that's another instance. So meaning that if I have 9 total chunks around here, if I can draw it, I've basically got 9 draw calls for the same tree instances, which I think is all right for now because if I was to put everything into one instance, then the frustum culling wouldn't work as far as I understand, meaning you have more triangles. So I think it's better to have everything sort of instanced per chunk. But it's just an interesting thing to note because I do want to like improve draw distance in future. So at some point, I'll have to, instead of having one instance, I'll have to just have some sort of a tree manager that adds all the trees into it and then renders it. But I'll have to test it, what the performance is like, because as far as I understand it, the frustum culling wouldn't work. if everything is an instanced mesh and everything is inside that. So if you have any experience with that, please feel free to throw a comment down below and let me know. And just as a note again, you can check out, this is currently already released, so you can check out the current status of it on strain0.com. All right, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.